Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Ultimate Fashion History's 20th Century Style Icon series. In this episode, we're going to throw a spotlight on a woman who is so famous in France, so famous on mainland Europe, and so famous in Egypt, but isn't all that well known in Anglophone countries. The ultimate diva, Dalida. I dedicate this episode to two of my students, Terence Trent and Carmangelo, who is also a UFH group admin member. I know these two boys very well, and they are going to love Dalida. Question: who was the most beautiful woman to ever walk out of Egypt? Cleopatra? Well, in real life, maybe not so much. Nefertiti, she's a good contender. But for me, the most beautiful Egyptian ever was Dalida, even though she wasn't actually Egyptian by ancestry. She was born Yolanda Gigliotti. She was of Italian descent. And the reason she was born in Cairo is that her father was a professional musician who was assigned to, I believe, the Cairo Symphony. Although her parents were Italian, she grew up as an Egyptian woman, which is why she took the Egyptian Arabic name Dalida as her stage name. But let's not get too bogged down in nationality here, because Dalida was truly international. She was of Italian heritage. She was Egyptian by birth. She became a French citizen in the early 1960s and had a career that really spanned at least 20 countries. Before we go on, I want to make a personal note about Dalida. Dalida is, to me, one of the most beautiful women who has ever lived. I love her face. Dalida's face is the kind of female face that I like best. Long and strong, with a prominent nose. I absolutely think she is sublime. I love faces that are structured like this, and I really go for that sort of handsome prettiness as opposed to the prettiness of somebody like the beautiful Audrey Hepburn. If I could wake up tomorrow with a completely different face, I think I'd choose Dalida's. Dalida was the ultimate diva. Now, the word diva is sort of misused nowadays, isn't it, to describe a badly behaving, loud, over-the-top drama queen. Dalida was a diva in the truest sense of the word, however. She was a beautiful woman on the inside and the outside. She was a lovely human being. But she really was the grande dame of music, this great chanteuse with this incredibly dramatic stage presence and an awful lot of personal tragedy which she brought to the stage and into her music and into her performances. How did this happen? How did little Yolanda in Cairo become an international superstar? Well, as she grew up, she blossomed into a particularly striking young woman. And actually in the mid-1950s, she won the Miss Cairo competition in this wonderful animal print bikini. It was around about this time that she was discovered and whisked off to France to begin her musical career as a singer, because Dalida, as well as being absolutely exquisite, had this beautiful, deep, husky, soulful singing voice. And her musical career was launched. But to say she had a musical career is almost an understatement. To put it into perspective, at this point, Beyoncé has sold about 20 million records. That's a lot, right? Dalida, in her career, sold 150 million records. She sang in French, in Egyptian Arabic, in German, in Spanish, in Portuguese, in Italian, of course, in Dutch. It goes on. And so her career was truly international. When she first appeared on the scene, she was working a sort of Sophia Loren, Italian, earthy, gypsy peasant look, like on this album cover here. And then it morphed into a dark-haired sort of Brigitte Bardot type of look in the early 1960s. But it was in the late 60s, 70s and beyond that Dalida really carved her signature look. with the deep side-parted, elbow-length, honey-coloured hair and perpetual tan. So it's Dalida in the late 60s, 70s and beyond that we're going to be looking at today. We often discuss, don't we, what makes somebody a 20th century style icon in this series, and one of the things we often come back to is the idea that once somebody finds their perfect signature look, they stick to it, and Dalida certainly did. Her deep side-parted, elbow-length golden hair, glowing tan, and the long gowns she favoured, often in rather blingy textiles, lots of sequins and bugle beads. She always favoured long gowns over short, even in her personal life. It was very goddess-like. Take a look at this image here on the right, and you can see why they called her Saint Dalida in France. Dalida had a very dramatic stage persona, and this was certainly parlayed into her wardrobe, both on stage, like here, and in her personal life. There was no disconnect between Dalida's stage costumes and her personal wardrobe. Don't you love this picture of her, obviously in the late 1960s or early 70s, on the streets of Montmartre wearing this quite fantastic maxi dress? But on stage, she incorporated a lot of ostrich feathers, a lot of sequins and bugle beads and things like that. And if you take these images together, you can see that all of these gowns are very different. And in fact, they range over a period of years of her career. But she's really pulling from the same fashion aesthetic, drawing from the same fashion playbook. All of these gowns are completely different, but they are all 100% Dalida. But obviously her crowning glory was this incredible mane of golden hair, deeply side-parted, slightly bouffant, and flowing over her shoulders like liquid gold. When I was putting this together, I made an executive decision to grow out my signature bob. Yes, I'm going to have long, flowing Dalida hair. It'll probably take me 25 years to grow it this long, but I'm going for it because it's so spectacular. Dalida, she was dramatic and she had dramatic hair, and she used her hair like a prop. She was always flinging it around or piling it up with her hands and letting it flow and pulling it across her face as she sang of tragic love. She kept her hair long throughout her career up until the time of her death when she was in her 50s. And although the style varied slightly, it was always kind of the same. Side-parted, elbow-length, bouffant and flowing. And if you would like to know how to get hair like this is a wonderful picture of Dalida with her set. In photographs, she was often backlit so that her hair would give off this incredible golden glow. Saint Dalida. Dalida's dramatic stage persona was certainly echoed in her personal life. Many of the people that she loved greatly died, some by their own hands. Dalida said of herself that she loved too much, which doesn't sound like it could be a bad thing, but it's an unrealistic thing. In the case of Dalida, every relationship was the big love. It was the grand amour. And of course, it's not that way in real life, because if it were, every breakup would be the grand tragedy, wouldn't it? And for Dalida, it certainly was that way. Every time a relationship failed, she would be plunged into this tragic, epic heartache and depression. And yet she would try again, and the next guy would be the big love. And if that didn't work out, or if he died, or if he killed himself, then it would plunge her into a level of despair anew. She gave so much of herself to her fans, to her romantic partners, to everyone, that I think ultimately she didn't have that much to give to herself, which is why when she was only 54 years old, she killed herself. And she left such a simple but such a heartbreaking suicide note. Here it is. It simply says, "Life is unbearable to me. Forgive me, Dalida." Evidently, she had one romantic letdown too many and just couldn't bear it anymore. When she died, it was front-page news, particularly in France, where she was the most famous. And it was such a shock because it wasn't as if she'd gone into retirement and then we found out she'd killed herself. She was still such an enormous star. Only a few days before, she'd been on television in an interview laughing and singing and joking and being the lovely, warm, vibrant and absolutely vital person that she was. She was always so alive, and so it's so ironic that she took her own life. This is Dalida's grave, which I think is really beautiful because it really speaks to the iconic image that she carved for herself of being so powerful as a woman, and yet it turned out she felt she had very little power, sadly. And what I think is really nice is that little square in Montmartre in Paris, near to where Dalida lived. There is now this beautiful bust of Dalida, and the little square has been renamed Place Dalida, and quite rightly. She is an icon, and because of the way that she looked, because of her drama, and of course because of the kind of tragedy that surrounded her, it'll come as no surprise to learn that she is a huge cult figure in France, and a favourite of drag artists. In this year, 2017, in France, there was a real celebration of Dalida and her life. To reiterate her standing as a genuine style icon, there was a large exhibition of her clothes, her wardrobe, in Garde-robe de la vie à la scène, Dalida, at the Galliera. And here is just one of the many halls given over to Dalida's wardrobe, both her stage costumes and her personal wardrobe. Take a look at the simple white shift dress on the right there, and check this out. This is Dalida being fitted for that very same dress. And because I love details, you'll notice that at some point another ring of those crocheted circles was added to the gown. In January of this year, a biop of Dalida came out, and it's really quite amazing how much the actress who plays Dalida looks like her. I haven't actually seen this movie yet, but I think I might watch it as soon as I put this up on YouTube. I'm having a big Dalida moment right now. Well, although this episode of UFH had quite a sad ending, I hope that you enjoyed it nonetheless. If you already knew who Dalida was, I hope I did her justice. If you weren't familiar with her, I hope I've introduced you to somebody who is really worth listening to, because apart from everything else, she is a wonderful, wonderful singer. You can contact me through my website, amandahalley.com. Like us on Facebook. Join our Facebook group. We always have a lot of fun over there. I'm back every week with more episodes on the Ultimate Fashion History, so just click the little circle to subscribe. And as always, thanks ever so much for watching. Bye for now.